Hi, I'm Dom from Solida Solutions. Today I want to go over my 3 top tips when creating a workspace in Notion, because having a blank page in front of you can be quite daunting. So hopefully these tips can give you a bit of a jumping off point to help you get started. The first tip is around database organization. See, a workspace is fundamentally just a load of pages that you use to look at stuff, like this page here, and a load of databases to store the data that you will view on these pages. But before you start creating a bunch of pages, it's good to have a think about what databases you will need to make this space work. So let's think of a typical example here, which is project management. You'll need a few databases to make a project management workspace work. You could have a task database, a project database, maybe a meetings database, and maybe a team database. These are the databases that will fuel the rest of the workspace and all the different views you create off the back of that. It's really good to keep these separate, because as you grow and expand the workspace, you might be tempted to add small databases here and there. Maybe you have some data that you want to collect about a project, so you create a database for that. But then you put that database in a page and you can't remember where you put it, and it's hard to find where all that data originated from. And this can start to get really confusing and ultimately just make the workspace messy. So having a think up front about what the core databases you are going to use are, and then putting them somewhere that is separate. So let me quickly turn all of these into databases. Okay, so now I have my 4 core databases. If you look on the Notion sidebar here, you'll notice that you have your new project management workspace page. And then if you click here, you have your 4 databases. Now, a good way to organize this instead is to create a separate area, call it databases, and then move all of these to your databases page. That way, whenever you want to find databases, you know that they're all in the same place. And then any database views you want to use from those databases, you can add to this page. But you always know that your databases are here. If I go to my own workspace, you can see that I have a bunch of different team spaces that cover different things, but all of the databases that power each of these team spaces are in this one databases area. And this is quite a lot of databases, but all my databases. So I always know where the data originates from. Okay, so now you've listed out your databases, you're ready to start making pages. And a navigation bar will make your workspace far more usable. It removes the need to use this sidebar here while moving around within the workspace, because you may well have multiple setups even within the same area. So it's just really helpful to keep all of that contained in one thing, and then you don't need to have the sidebar open all the time to navigate. So starting with design, typically what people do is they create a callout like this. So we'll call this navigation. And then what they do is they add relevant links. So we already have a databases page that we would like to link to. It's also helpful in a navigation bar to have a link back to the main page. Or if this is going to be kind of the home page of your setup, what you can do instead is you can give it a name like home, and then you can copy the link to the page and add it like this. relevant. Ultimately, as long as you have all the relevant links for the workspace within the navigation bar, then it should be functional. One thing you can do as you start to have lots of pages is use toggles to keep it tidy when you aren't using it. So I'll go back to my workspace to give you an example. So this is my main page, and as you can see, I've got a bar along the top. And I use this databases toggle here to show all of those. And then another thing you can do is add buttons to common jobs that you like to do that apply across the entire workspace. So here I just have a button to add a new task and a button to add a new idea. Now, going back to our navigation bar, in terms of positioning, there are kind of two typical ways you see this done. So there's the way I just showed you, which is the bar along the top. And then you can have it where you've got the bar along the side. So that would be something like this. And you have text here. And your navigation bar would live along the side. Now this, I guess, looks a lot more like a website and kind of mirrors this sidebar that Notion itself uses. And I think that's, probably the more common way of doing it. Personally though, I like to have my navigation bar along the top. If you want the navigation bar to be a true replacement for the sidebar and actually the main way that you get around your workspace, you'll want to replicate the bar in every page and every template within a database that you have across the entire workspace. And there could be all different kinds of designs that you choose to go with. Having the navigation bar along the top means that it is kind of design agnostic because everything else on the page will occur below that bar. So that can look however you want. The problem is, though, the way that callouts work is you can't actually have columns inside of them. So what you end up having then is a load of links like this, and then a whole load of unused white space. So there's actually a better way to create a callout, which is to create a page. And then within that page, create 3 columns. Where you would have your links. So this will look a bit like the navigation bar I showed you earlier. So now if I go back here, I can turn this into a callout. And as you can see, I've now got 3 columns. So let's get rid of this one. Call this home, take the link to this page and add it in, make this a link to my databases, and then maybe this could be a button. And that's a much more effective use of the space. One last thing though, I mentioned that you might want to have the navigation bar on every page and template within the workspace. So how do you make a navigation bar and then keep it consistent across, what could end up being a huge workspace with 40, 50 pages or more? Well, to do that, you want to create a synced block. So now that you have a synced block and dropped the callout inside of the synced block, what you'll notice is if I then duplicate this by clicking on the 6 dots and then clicking duplicate, or you can click Command D, anything I do in this one will actually be replicated in this one. So if I add something here, you'll see it here. So basically what you want to do is every time you create a new page or a new template, you just duplicate it. I could move that to my databases page. And I go into databases, I have my navigation bar at the top, and I can easily navigate between the two. Well, I've just realized. This doesn't have the link anymore. So you can see how by having this ubiquitously across your entire workspace with every relevant page in the navigation bar, it makes it much easier to get around. And my last tip, and it's a real bread and butter one for Notion, is templates. Every database should have at least one template. If anything, it just allows you to be consistent across every entry into a database. So let's go to databases here and let's go to tasks. If you click this arrow next to new, you can see there is an option to add a new template. So let's call this new task. Before we get started, there's one really obvious thing we can do, which relates to the last tip, and that is go back here, go home, duplicate this, and move it to our new task template that we just made. So now if we go here to new task, you'll see that we automatically have one of these, which is great. So if we go back to edit this, there are a couple of other things to be aware of. Part of creating a Notion workspace will most likely be to improve on a workflow that you have. And having a template allows you to create a consistent and replicable workflow. So if there's, for example, every time you have a new task, if there's certain sections that you're always going to use, like maybe some standard ones are to have a notes section for the task, maybe you want to have resources or assets, you can add those in as a reminder. And then obviously you can structure the page to look exactly how you want to nail that workflow. Going back up to the top, there are a few things you can do. You can add covers to kind of customize things, and you can add icons. Adding icons can be good to have in a template because they generate consistency. Personally though, and this kind of depends on what the use case is, I think it can be useful not to add the icon because it tells you, if you don't have an icon, whether or not the page has something in it. So if you see this page icon here has 2 lines in it, that means that there is something in the page. Now, if I add a new task, that icon isn't present, and that's because I haven't used the template. If you want to make the template you've created the default template, then you just go back to that arrow next to new and you click set as default. And you can actually change this so that it only becomes the default template in certain views, which is an extra layer of customization that can be really useful. And you can also make it repeat. So if there are certain weekly tasks that you need to do, you can create a template for each of those tasks. And then on, let's say, Monday at 9 a.m., it will automatically create all of those tasks, which is another great use case for templates. So those are my 3 tips. Hopefully they were useful and can kind of get you thinking about how you would like to design a workspace and what best practices. Thanks for watching.